Welcome to the Voices of the Goddess podcast. We believe that there is a goddess inside each and every one of us. When we use our voice to share that goddess, we support and uplift each other. Join us each week as we interview women to receive the message of their goddess within.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. It is still morning, and I'm excited to be here. My name is Allyson Mancini, and I am your holistic nutritionist.
And I am Julietta, the magical PT. Welcome to our Voices of the Goddess podcast, where we support women in becoming the goddess they are meant to be. We are joined this morning with Stella. Welcome to the show, Stella. Can you please introduce yourself and tell our audience a little bit about you?
Good morning, ladies. Good morning. I am Stella Amador. I am currently the co-owner and vice president of Florida Quality Roofing. I have a little bit of a background, mostly in marketing and branding. In my past life, I ran a large personal injury law firm, about 8 offices in Florida, 1 in Georgia, and that's where I got my start. I actually also have a degree in psychology, which helps me, figure out what makes people tick. And this September is going to be my 10th year anniversary as partners with my business.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yes.
I didn't realize it's been 10 years for you. That's incredible.
Yes. So my company is actually 19 years old this past April, and in September will be my 10th year. So, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And also cool, you're kind of in an industry that, in my experience, is dominated by men. So super cool to see a woman in there in the roofing industry. And I mean, I'm assuming you're not climbing on roofs yourself and hammering things, or are you?
Not necessarily doing the work myself. I do go on some of the commercial roofs, some of the more accessible roofs when we're meeting with clients. If it's a large project, I'm part of the process, not on the day-to-day homeowner situation, but mostly anything that's outside of Florida, which our reach is not just limited to South Florida, but we're also working throughout Central, the Tampa area, the Orlando area, and South. So whenever that occurs, I'm usually the one that goes and meets with the board members and the building owners, et cetera, when it's a large project.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, welcome to our show. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are going to dive right into our questions. And our first question, Stella, is what is your superpower, or what would you choose it to be?
I think curiosity. I think I'm super curious about other people. I'm interested in what's going on in the world. I usually like to joke that I know a little bit of everything and a whole lot of nothing because I do, skim the news. I skim what's going on with my friends, and I like to be abreast of what's going on with my clients, with my company, with everything. So I guess being interested, and I'll pivot that to listening. Because of my curiosity, I tend to be a good listener, and I tailor a lot of my, clients' proposals based on what I hear from them, based on what we consult during our first conversation. So I would say that's it.
That's an awesome superpower to have.
So when I was a kid, my dad used to always give me a hard time because I was very curious. I'm the same way. I ask questions to people all the time because that's how you learn. That's how you know. That's how you get information. He used to give me the hardest time about that. And as I got older, I realized what a superpower that is, to be curious, because that's how you are actively listening when you're asking those questions and getting that feedback. And that's incredible. I love that. So I'm right there with you. I'm a curious person. I drive some people crazy because I ask too many questions, but it's all good.
I do too, and that's okay. My other superpower is that I don't really care. Okay.
Awesome. All right. Our next question is, what is a book that has greatly influenced your life?
I was so excited to read this question because when I first read this book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, When I first read it, I actually bought 30 copies of it. And I gave it away to everybody that I knew and loved that Christmas. And I always had a stack of like 10 of them. And whenever anybody came over to my place, and if they saw it on my nightstand or on my coffee table, and they said, "What is this about?" And I'd be like, "You know what? I got a better one for you. Here's a copy." It was an absolute a wonderful book to read, and it's impacted me in so many ways. And I like to read it at least once every couple of years. I reread it. And it's a small book. If you haven't read it, if you don't know it, it's a small book, and it seems fairly simplistic. But as Einstein once famously said, if you say something complex, you may lose your audience. But if you say it simply, you really understand it well. So he's a genius at figuring out what makes us tick in a very simplistic sort of way. But when you go back and read it, you realize how deep it is and how impactful it can be. So that would be it's one of my favorite books of all times.
Yeah, I think that book has come up more than once. And that was also we talked about this in another episode. Allyson challenged me to this Facebook book challenge, and The Alchemist was also one of the books that I posted on my 12-week challenge. Yeah.
So did you read it?
Oh yeah, but I'm thinking it's time to read it again, because it's been a long time, and he's a great author. I've read several of his other books as well. So like if you've made it through that one, check out the other ones too. They are great. And you are so right about, I get frustrated when I see people, sometimes they're trying to show off like how smart they are and how much they know by using big words and just, talking above everyone. And I'm like, I used to work with somebody like that. He'd explain what's going on to the patients using all the medical terminology, and they turn and they look at me like, what did he just say? And, and then I would translate it into terms that everybody can understand. Cause like it serves no one to be preaching an important lesson if no one can understand what it is. So, that is like really a gift to be able to explain something deep, meaningful, profound in simplest terms that everyone can understand. So
and I think the thing precisely is if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it fully, which
perfect.
I still have never read that book.
Okay, so challenge number 500 here. I really, really highly recommend it. I can send it to you. You give me your address, I'll send it to you.
We'll get this on our book club list.
I was just gonna say that. I think that has to be added to our book club list because it keeps coming up. So
yeah. And for those of you that don't know, in our Circle of Goddess group on Facebook, we have a book club going always. This month, we're doing spiritual economics. Join us if you're not already in on that. It's not too late. This book is also a fast, easy read. But we will definitely add The Alchemist onto the list of books that we are going to read. Yay.
For sure.
So, and hopefully you will join us when we're doing that book club, Stella, and just,
Absolutely.
Give some of your feedback on the book.
I would love to.
Yeah, cool. All right. Time for question number 3 is, what is your favorite self-care practice?
So I have many. I'll confess I'm kind of like a self-care addict.
Love that.
And I do not need recovery. I'm perfectly fine and guilt-less about my self-care routine. I think my number one, which everyone that is in my inner circle knows, and even if you've heard me at any conversation, I'll bring it up. I dance on a regular basis, and I have a dance studio. Shout out to Jessie from Funk and Flow. We have something called Funk Body, which is kind of like a improvisation of this awesome dancer. And we follow her lead, and it's not choreographed. It's different every time. It's different music. It's global music. So I do it 5 times a week. And I tell her all the time, if she had 7 classes, I would go to all 7. So that's my guilty pleasure or my self-care, whatever. And again, I have zero guilt, zero shame about it.
Love it. Love
Okay,
it. And that's
so
a new one.
I know I need to ask, like, were you a dancer? Did you do that as a younger child or?
So I am a frustrated artist. I am the daughter of a musician and the granddaughter to a famous artist. She was a painter and a sculptor. And so I grew up around performing arts. And for the first, I would say 10 years of my life, 11 years of my life, I was fully immersed in that world. So, once you leave, this was in Nicaragua where I'm from. And once I left there and I came to the United States, I kind of put that to the back burner and focused heavily on becoming, a studious student and getting a scholarship and going to college. So that kind of stayed in the background. And now it's kind of like, okay, I've done all those things. Can I get back to my artistic side? Can I get back to my passion, which is dancing? And it's really just dancing for me. It's not dancing for people. It's just dancing for myself, for my soul. And it makes me feel amazing. It's almost like I call it my therapy. It's blocked off in my calendar. Everyone knows not to book me for anything. And everyone knows, are you out of your dance class? Are you in your dance class? It's a do not disturb situation.
I love that you put it on your schedule. Your self-care is on your schedule. So that's an awesome way of making sure that it happens. Because I think a lot of, and you talk about like not feeling guilty about it. And so often, we're really in this group trying to promote that women start to put themselves first and really do these self-care practices. And even though we know this, how many times is it like the first thing that gets wiped off of our schedule because other things become more important? And it shouldn't be that way. Like self-care really needs to be number one, because again, Allison's favorite quote, you got to put your own oxygen mask on first before you put it on others. So
I love that. Yeah, that's exactly how it is.
So
I'm a little jealous that she dances every day, because as a kid I wanted to be a ballerina. That was like my dream, was to be a classical ballerina. So, and then my daughter danced for years. So I love dancing, but I have found the older that I've gotten, and this is kind of sad, I'm very, I worry too much about what other people think when I dance now. It's really bad. So I think maybe I might have to explore going back into some kind of dance class.
Yeah, you should definitely try. One of the things that I do because I'm like the mascot of this dance group, because I'm there all the time and I became friends with the instructor. And so whenever somebody new comes in, I notice them and I have a quick chat, like, hey, you're new. How are you? I'm Stella, if you have any questions, let me know. And also just don't worry about what you look like. We're all just worried about what we look like. So, and just, have fun. And you're not going to and one of the things I love is that it's a super open space. It's free of judgment, free of anything. It's very relaxed, and you do what you can and you do the best, and no one's going to call you out, no one's going to make you feel bad, no one's going to say anything. Like I said, everyone's just focused on doing their thing. And how many things do we stop doing because we're afraid of what we're going to look like, or what it's going to sound like, or what it's going to affect? And one of the things from the Alchemist that I've got that always resonates with me is you have this life, and we were all trying to do the best we can with what we have. And you're only responsible to yourself. So that makes it easier, for me to jump on a ledge and be like, okay, I'm going to try something new. Like you ladies, you're doing awesome by putting the spotlight on women and the self-care and wanting to elevate, what we're used to and what's been programmed for us in the world that we live in.
And like you mentioned, like so often people are sitting there worrying about what other people are looking at them. And it's like, everybody's looking at themselves. Like no one's even noticing you, because just like you're looking at yourself, worrying about how you're looking, they're looking at themselves too. And we're all just like worried about how we look, and it's like, stop it. Just be you, do you, and love it.
Yeah, I have the saying, do you, boo? Just do you. Okay. It's all good.
Love it.
Yeah. So Allyson, two things I'm challenging for, and you're welcome to tap me for these things. So one is the Alchemist.
Yeah.
And one is my dance class. You're welcome to come check it out. It's in it's in Fort Lauderdale. I don't know where you're at, but I can shoot you an invitation and you can come check it out.
Okay. I'm open to that. Shoot me an invitation.
Okay, we'll do. I'll write it down.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome. All right. Question number 4 is, because you got a lot going on, Stella. So how do you keep yourself accountable? How do you make sure it all happens?
So I already mentioned one of them, the calendar. I live and die by the calendar. Everything is in the calendar always. If I'm doing anything, even if I'm just going for a jog or if I'm going for a walk, it's always in the calendar. The other way is I'm a huge fan of lists. Wherever I go, whatever I do, like you just mentioned, I just said I'm going to do something and I write it down. The pleasure that I receive from checking something off or scratching something off. I don't know. I've heard some people feel that way. I can't do it electronically. I need it in writing. I need it in a paper, and I need to be able to cross it out. But really, in the larger perspective, I keep myself accountable. And I think, Julietta, you and I were talking before we started, and part of it is, my word. If I say I'm going to do something, it's ingrained in me. It's almost like a little time clock inside of me that, creates this urgency that it has to get done. And I think that translates to everything that we do. If you say you're going to show up to have coffee with a friend, it's not so much about, whether you're 5 to 10 minutes late. It's honoring that person's time and the effort that person's putting through to be there and meet with you. Same thing in business. If you say to a client, you're going to be there at a certain time and you want to earn their business, you want to be there a little bit earlier, be there a little bit, show up. I think showing up has always been a blessing to me. And it's the thing that keeps me motivated. Whenever I say I'm going to do something, I have to show up for myself and I have to show up for the people who depend on me.
Yeah. Go ahead, Allyson.
So I was thinking about, as you're saying that, because we, the three of us, know each other through BNI, which is a international networking organization. And Stella and I have had some interactions through BNI, and just watching her as because you are the current president of your chapter, right?
I'm a glutton for punishment. Second time.
I know. Second time. I know. You need a break. But I have watched Stella over the last 2 years, and she is very serious. She does exactly what she says she's going to do. In fact, she keeps me on my toes because she'll say to me like, okay, I'll ask her for something because she has amazing ideas. And she'll be like, okay, no problem. I'll send that to you. And like, I'll get an email from her like an hour later. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have got to get better at responding faster. I'm like, Stella is making me look bad. But my whole point is that it's so true. And I thank you for you holding yourself accountable, because you are such a great example to other women and men that you truly do what you say you're going to do. And when you do that, it holds other people to a higher standard also. And I appreciate that about you.
Oh, thank you, Allyson. That's so nice. And I look to you. You always have amazing ideas too. I mean, this whole thing that you're doing is also an extension of what happens in BNI and how we come up with these things. And, kudos to both of you, because it takes a lot of, holding yourselves accountable to be here and do this on a regular basis. So, we can be each other.
That is true, because Julietta and I, so when we went into the pandemic, we were talking about how can we continue to support our women we know. And it started out our chapter members, and then it went to like women we know. And then it just kind of went to the community. And now it's like everybody, you know what I mean? So, when we started this, it really was about supporting and encouraging and being accountable to each other, because when one of us would freak out, the other one would be like, no, we got this. So yeah.
That's awesome. And so good to see that coming out of, something so terrible. I mean, it's been awful for most people, and being stuck at home and getting creative and, being inventive during a time of need is usually when the best ideas happen. So
Sure.
It's to you.
Thank you. One other thing I want to say about, I totally appreciate, people honoring their commitments, being their word. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. And I think one area that people get stuck on that too is like too often, especially us as women, like we don't want to say no to people. So we commit way more than what we should be committing. And, I just want everybody out there to know that it's okay to say no. It's far better to say, no, I'm not going to do something than to say, yes, I'm going to do it. And then just like back out and not do it. I just like, everybody, my thing for everybody out there listening to this today, there's going to be one thing coming up today that like your knee-jerk reaction is to say yes because you don't want to hurt that person's feelings or you don't want to disappoint them. My request from you today is to find that one thing and just say no. And you don't have to apologize, and you can just say, no, sorry, I can't do that.
And that's such a beautiful thing to give to your listeners. And I echo those sentiments. Part of listening is also listening for when someone's like kind of on the fence. And, whenever someone's on the fence, instead of running away from that, I usually go forward with that. And I'm like, listen, if you don't want to do it, just tell me. It's perfectly okay if you want to say no to me. Because a lot of times, like you said, we're so inclined to be like, yes, I'll do something. And, luckily I've learned a long time ago, I can't be everything to everybody. And so, I do say no more often than I say yes, actually, awesome. especially with clients, because I've designed my company a certain way. I often have to tell people who want my business, I don't think we're a good fit. And I explain why. And, just having an open and honest conversation. But if you sense someone is on the fence, so I'll dovetail what you said, if there's something that comes up today and you want to say no, because you have other commitments, if you sense someone is on the fence, don't just walk away from that, lean in and say, listen, and if you can't, or if you don't have the time, it's perfectly okay. I think sometimes we like to, just walk away from difficult conversations, and those are the ones we really need to rush into.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Yes. Great conversations this morning. Takeaways. I was going to say something else, but after this conversation right now, my takeaway, I always look at like giving myself permission to say no. And I love that, watching out for other people and giving them the permission to say no. Like that's a great other side. Everything has two sides. And so, I love it when I get presence to the other side of something. So thank you for that, Stella. What's your takeaway, Allyson?
Okay, mine was going to be different also until the very end of our conversation. And then I'm like, okay, wait a second. So I have had this come across my world a lot lately, and it's those difficult conversations. Like, I love how you said that. Don't be afraid to have those difficult conversations, to lean into that, because, and I'm learning those difficult conversations, really incredible things can come out of them. It may not seem like it at the time. It may not feel like it, but they really do. So I appreciate that. And that is something I think I learned as a kid. Conflict was bad, like avoid conflict at all costs. And I think that's something I just was raised in my home, that we didn't go there. We didn't go to that part of conversations. And I think to look at that as a place where you can learn and you can grow. And yeah, I think that you have to do the difficult conversations, but they make you even better. So
yeah, you'd be surprised what comes out of that. Some of the best things that have ever happened in my life come out of difficult conversations.
Very cool. What's your takeaway today, Stella?
I think the biggest takeaway for me for the past year has been that, we always talk about the cliche of like, out of something bad, something good comes out of it. And we say it, very laissez-faire, but the reality is that, you ladies put together something wonderful in a difficult time. So think about all the great things. There's so many negative things that we can focus on. Let's think about all the good things that have come out of the past year. And that's my takeaway. I'm constantly trying to look for those things to reaffirm, all the positivity as opposed to focusing on the negative.
Well, where our attention goes, our energy flows. So definitely when you're focusing on the positive, we make more positive. So yes, great point. All right. You ladies have anything final to add?
No.
All right. Well, thank you, Stella, so much for joining us. Lots of wisdom in today's conversation. And for our listeners, like anything that we talked about, you'll find it in the comments, in the show notes, etc., how to access what we've talked about and how to get in touch with any of us if you need to. Thank you to our listeners. If you've enjoyed this show, please subscribe, like, comment, share this with your girlfriends. Let's get the word out there and lift all of the women out there up. And thank you all. Yes, and have a magical day.
Bye, Stella. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.